Beauty trends have taken some wild turns throughout history, and let's be honest, some were downright ridiculous. Ever tried walking in chopine shoes that made women over 20 inches taller? Or squeezing into a corset so tight you could barely breathe? Painful, bizarre, yet once highly desirable, these unusual trends shaped cultures worldwide. Journey with us to the past. Let's explore the most unusual beauty trends from history. Number 12. Long fingernails. Acrylics and artificial nails may be a symbol of beauty and elegance in the 21st century, but there was a time when long nails were associated with something other than beauty. While wearing extremely long nails these days will certainly get you the attention, long natural nails measuring up to 5 inches or more were a symbol for something different back in ancient history. Going back to the Zhou dynasty in China, between 1046 to 256 BCE, people of high social standing could only be recognized by their nails. Having extremely long nails among the aristocrats was a sign that the wearer did not do manual work and was part of the common folk. Realistically, long natural nails were difficult and almost impossible for hard work, and so having one proved that the wearer did not have to work to earn money. Long nails were not restricted to women only, as both men and women wore long nails in ancient China. While it was hard enough to carry out basic tasks with these long nails, the wearer also had to wear nail guards made of gold, silver, or other precious metals to protect their nails. But it wasn't just about the length of the nails that determined one's social standing, but the color too. The aristocrats and Chinese royals painted their nails in red, gold, silver, and even black, while commoners or people of lower social standing painted their light pink. Any commoner who was caught with their nails in red or black was severely punished or even executed. The long nails, the nail guards on each finger, and the color painted on the nails further cemented one's place in society as an aristocrat. But besides being a mark of elegance, long nails in ancient China were seen as important parts of the body, and cutting it off could be seen as a sacrifice to the realm or an extreme show of affection. In India, however, long nails were worn for a different reason. While ancient Chinese wore long nails as a symbol of affluence, the Indians wore them as a symbol of detachment from material possessions. Holy men or sadhu in India were often recognized by their long nails, a symbol of their commitment to a life of asceticism and spiritual devotion, which meant leaving their nails to grow to extreme lengths without cutting them off. The longer the nails, the more devoted the person was said to be. Like the ancient Chinese, the ancient Egyptians and Babylonians felt the same way about long nails, and highly revered it as a status symbol for the rich. Although long nails are no longer a status symbol in the present generation, it still beats the bizarre ancient practice of literally using poison to appear beautiful. Number 11. Painted on veins and pale skin. Have you ever seen a person so pale their veins are sticking out like branches on their skin? In this present day, that could have been ruled as a symptom of blood loss or a major illness, but back in history, like in the Victorian era, it was a beauty trend a lot of women jumped on. Although this trend became very popular in the Victorian era, it was said to actually start in ancient Egypt. In those times, a pale complexion was a very attractive trait for women, as it meant such women were of a higher class and did not spend much time outdoors or in the sun. To achieve this look, women would apply harmful materials on their skin like lead makeup to make them appear white. Some even went as far as consuming arsenic to make their skin lighter. However, even after being pale, women went the extra mile to emphasize their supposed pale complexion by drawing on blue veins on specific parts of their bodies like the faces, hands, and chests. The painted-on veins made the skin appear more translucent and gave the women an almost ethereal look. For some women, this was the easiest way to achieve this, but some others took it a step further by using leeches to make the vein pop out. For a period where pale and almost white skin was highly treasured, it signified a woman's high social standing and sent a message that the woman was rich enough to avoid spending time out in the open. Surprisingly, This act continued until the early 20th century, when it began to fade, and women stopped using lead and arsenic as makeup products to achieve a translucent and flawless skin. The thought of putting lead and arsenic on our bodies today is outrageous. But in some cultures, a different material that is put on one part of the body also has the potential to choke you to death. Number 10. Long neck rings. Imagine looking at a giraffe and thinking it looks beautiful because of its long neck. Well, the women of some tribes in Africa and Asia have the same idea, but in a different way. In the Kayan tribe of Myanmar, an ancient tradition of elongating the neck with brass rings has persisted for centuries. The reason behind this belief is that the longer the neck of a woman, the more attractive she is. Ironically, this tradition was said to have been invented to make women less attractive and also to protect them from being kidnapped by rival communities. Surprisingly, its purpose changed, and it became a symbol of beauty in these cultures. From the age of 6 or 8, a girl starts wearing the rings around her neck and foot, and will continue to do so for the rest of her life. Gradually, more rings are added as the girl grows older, creating the illusion that the neck is longer than it should be. In reality, the rings do not stretch the neck, neither do they elongate the bone in the neck. Instead, the rings push the clavicle and ribs down at an angle lower than normal and gives the impression that the neck has become longer. Wearing neck rings may have been a tradition for the Kayan tribe centuries ago, but today it has faded as many women in this village refuse to wear these rings around their necks. But the Kayans are not the only people known for this. In South Africa, a southern tribe of Ndebele women also wear neck rings, but for a different reason and under different circumstances. Unlike the Kayan tribe, where the rings function as a form of body modification, for the South African tribe, it does not, and is instead a form of marital right. Only the married women of the southern Ndebele tribe wear brass or copper rings, and these rings are gifted by their husbands. Additionally, the women must wear these rings until the death of their husbands. However, one thing these two cultures have in common is the belief that neck rings are a status symbol of beauty and faithfulness in marriage. Speaking of beauty trends and traditions, try to picture another beauty trend in the 1900s that involved consuming poison. Number 9. Fatal dieting. The desire to lose weight has existed for centuries, but while it is easier and safer now, people had to involve actual parasites and poison just to lose weight in ancient times. Back in the Victorian era, women desired to achieve an image that we would describe in present times as sickly. The ideal beautiful woman was said to be pale, with rosy cheeks and lips, a slender figure, and a tiny waist. To achieve that, women would swallow the cyst of a parasite, preferably a tapeworm, and allow it to grow to maturity in their stomachs. These women believed that the adult tapeworms would feed on whatever they ate, thereby preventing digestion and weight gain. When the worms became too mature, they would also ingest medications to flush them out. What these women did not account for was the side effects that came with this dangerous form of dieting. While this method appeared to work, it also led to serious health complications like diarrhea, stomach pain, and vomiting. Additionally, when tapeworms grew into adulthood, they could grow up to 30 feet long, and getting rid of them was very risky, especially when it was not carried out by medical personnel. But did this stop these women? Absolutely not. While most women adopted tapeworm infestation for weight loss, some other women took it a step further by ingesting small doses of arsenic. In large doses, arsenic is highly poisonous and could cause death. In very small doses, however, it could cause vomiting, loss of appetite, and diarrhea, the perfect weight loss method. Although this horrific method existed in the 1900s, it has not completely disappeared, as there have been reports of people still adopting this unusual method, albeit secretly. Although the Victorian-era women went far with their tapeworm, several countries went further with the use of animal waste. Number 8. Crocodile dung. Skincare is an important beauty trend that lots of people practice today, but back in the medieval times, the skincare practices were shitty, literally. While we use oils and creams from natural plant extracts, the women of old used different kinds of natural products including animal feces. Crocodile dung was a prized beauty product back in historic Egypt, especially during the time of Cleopatra. The dung would be collected and dried and then crushed to be used as smoky eyeshadow. In other cases, the dung would be mixed with ash and used as mascara, or mixed with mud and used as a face mask. When used on the eyes as a mascara or eyeshadow, medieval women believed it made their eyes sparkle and also protected their eyes from diseases. When applied on the face, the women believed it helped to brighten aged skin and remove wrinkles. But it wasn't just the women who enjoyed these benefits. In ancient Rome and Greece, public baths were common for the aristocrats. Sometimes fresh crocodile dung would be mixed with mud for the elites to enjoy a bath in. A popular case was that of Mark Antony, the lover and husband of Cleopatra. Whether the feces worked or not, we may never truly know, but what makes it so shocking is the fact that slathering the dung on their faces could have easily made them sick. Speaking of beauty trends that would make anyone sick, imagine having to break your bones just to fit into a standard of beauty. Number 7. Feet binding. Ever worn shoes that were about 2 sizes too small for your feet? How did it feel when you took them off? Now picture yourself going through that pain every day. That was the life of several women in ancient China for centuries. Foot binding, as the name implies, was a beauty trend in ancient China that involved breaking and altering the shape and size of a young girl's feet. This act would begin when the girl was about 5 or 6 years old and continue till adulthood. Each foot would be tightly bound with a special cloth and forced to fit into tiny shoes known as lotus shoes. Just like having a tiny waist was the ultimate symbol of beauty for women in the Victorian era, having tiny feet of about 3 or 4 inches was a symbol of beauty for women in Imperial China. But here's where it went horribly wrong. The entire process of foot binding would begin with dipping the girl's feet in hot water and clipping the toenails. The foot is then massaged and the bones of the toes are broken and bound so it remains flat. Over time, the foot would be dressed daily and rebound until it completely folds. By binding the feet tightly, the girls would go through the excruciating pain of walking around in bound feet all day. Although it was a beauty trend, it led to lifelong disabilities, paralysis, gangrene, and ulceration. The exact history of this trend is unknown, but it was said to have originated among the upper-class Chinese aristocrats just before the Song dynasty, before it trickled down to the commoners. It became so popular that it was not just seen as a beauty trend, but also a prerequisite for marriage. Surprisingly, foot binding remained a Chinese tradition for several years and would not be officially banned until 1912. The Chinese may have gone wild with their foot binding, but some other countries had an even wilder notion about permanently scarring their body parts. Number 6. Stretched piercing. Long before humans discovered the use of modern technology, piercings have existed as a form of expression, a trait of authority, or a beauty trend depending on the location. While piercings on different parts of the body still exist today, stretching a pierced body part is not so common anymore. In Africa, Asia, Eurasia, and some parts of America, it was common for materials like plugs, rings, wood, or stone to be used to stretch a healed piercing. It could be the pierced earlobe, the lower lip, or the bridge of the nose, but these pierced parts would be stuffed with materials of different sizes until the hole expanded. In some African countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania, the earlobes and lips would be stretched with large plates until they were large enough for a small fruit to pass through. Stretching an earlobe or any other body part served different purposes for men and women. For men, it was meant to scare away enemies, and for women, it was a sign of beauty and aesthetics. While stretching a pierced lobe must have been painful, the same can be said for ancient Europeans who did not mind bleeding themselves dry. Subscribers, pick. Certain looks and appearance could either send shiver down your spine or draw out a feeling of shock and horror from you. In the era of Queen Elizabeth I, sweets and sugary foods were the order of the day, so much so that tooth decay and loss was very common even for the Queen herself. But while the queen could afford the luxury of covering up a horrible case of dental decay or lead poisoning from makeup, others were not so fortunate and had to live with the effects of their diet and beauty trends. As we learn from the fate of our predecessors, we often ask, what would have been our fates without advancements in technology? If you care to find out, join us to discover 10 unusual beauty trends from history. Number 5. Bloodletting. For the longest time, mankind has always been obsessed with practices that would increase life and beauty. Bloodletting was one of such practices, and although it started out as a medical procedure to help cure certain diseases, it gradually became one of the most bizarre beauty trends to have existed. Back in ancient Europe, when having pale skin would get you privileges you may never have, a lot of women wanted to achieve the look by adopting several methods, all of which were dangerous. A medical procedure that involved cutting a vein to draw out poisoned or diseased blood in patients became the go-to beauty trend for women. While some women would cut their veins to draw out blood, some others would use leeches for the same purpose. By deliberately bleeding themselves, these women would have a very pale, almost ghostly pallor that was associated with wealth and leisure. But bloodletting was not just about appearance for women, it was also believed to help balance the body humors. While bloodletting may have worked, it had its own consequences that included weakness, fainting, and even death, especially when the woman has bled too much. But the rising toll of affected individuals did not stop the trend, as this bloody act continued for several years. This meant women had to carry out bloodletting sessions time and time again to maintain the pale look. But even the doctors at the time did not help, as they even recommended the act to people as a cure-it-all. Fortunately, the advancement of medical knowledge and research gradually pushed bloodletting out of the picture as a medical remedy and as a beauty trend. Bloodletting remains one of the most dangerous trends adopted by women, but if you think that was the worst of it, imagine having to drink one of your own body wastes. Number 4. Urine as an elixir. Would you imagine having to use your own urine for any kind of purpose besides medical tests or as waste? Well, our ancient ancestors did not think that way about urine. In fact, up until recent times, urine was a prized elixir that was used for all kinds of things to stay healthy and clean. In ancient Rome, they believed that urine had cleansing properties, and thus, they used it as a cleanser and a natural bleach for the teeth. To do this, human and animal urine would be collected and allowed to ferment for a while before it is used to clean the teeth as a whitening agent. Because of the high ammonia content, it was believed to be very effective at removing stains. Roman women were not left out either, as they reportedly made beauty masks from donkey urine. Similarly, they also used fermented urine as shampoo and as a bleach for golden hair. Besides cleaning teeth and beautifying skin, urine was also used in ancient Rome for other purposes, including treatment of burns, sores, inflammations, skin disease, and scorpion stings. In historical Europe, urine was widely used by both men and women to wash their faces in the hopes of achieving a clear, smooth complexion. Moving on to India, drinking urine for rejuvenation is part of a 5,000-year-old text associated with a Hindu god. In these texts, urine was said to cure asthma, arthritis, allergies, wrinkles, acne, and even cancer. For its practical uses, using urine for beauty treatments or for medicinal purposes showed how resourceful people were in times when modern cosmetics and modern medicine had not been discovered. Regardless of its putrid smell, the benefits of urine were taken very seriously, with some cultures still adopting it as a treatment today. The idea of applying bodily fluids in the name of beauty may seem extreme, but it does not compare to the harmful corset trend that dominated Europe for centuries. Number 3. Corsets. Amongst all the weird beauty trends that existed in history, corsets are perhaps the most popular. The idea of a sculpted body that looks like an hourglass was the dream of young girls in medieval Europe. Worn traditionally as undergarments, corsets were more of support garments that were worn to hold and train the torso into an hourglass figure. Made of fabrics and boning, corsets had a stiff panel and lace threads by which the corsets were tightened or loosened. But while corsets became widely known in the 19th century, they originated way before then and were already used in other parts of the world. In the 1500s, corsets were introduced to France by Catherine de' Medici. Although the early designs introduced at the time were different, they still had the same purpose of cinching the waist and making the waist look smaller. By the 16th century, corsets had become more popular among the British and European women and had become a common undergarment for the support of the waist and bust. In the 18th century, the corset had been modified to lift the breast, tightly cinch the waist, and make the woman stand upright. By the 1830s, the corset had been modified once more to support the bust and cinch the waist, but this time, the design did not stop at the stomach, it flared down to the hips. While the corsets give the illusion of a curvy woman with a narrow waist and wider shoulders and hips, it has not changed the fact that it is one of the most dangerous things to wear. Women of all social classes laced themselves tightly, often to the point of discomfort, to conform to the era's rigid beauty standards. Because of how tight the laces were tied, the corsets forced the internal organs to be squished together over time. Breathing was difficult, and complications like deformed rib cages and digestive problems arose. In worse cases, the organs were displaced from their original position, causing health complications in these women. Fainting became so common among corset-wearing women that fainting couches were fashionable household items. After all, a small waist symbolized femininity, elegance, and discipline, a reflection of societal expectations for women at the time. Eventually, corsets gradually faded in the early 20th century, giving way to more comfortable dressing for women. But while corsets sculpted bodies, a different trend in Japan involved permanently ruining their dentition. Number 2. Black teeth. Strong white teeth are one of the things lots of people strive to have, but ancient cultures in certain Asian countries believed the opposite. Meet the tribe where black teeth are seen as a sign of beauty. Like every other human, these people are born with normal teeth, but during puberty, the teeth are blackened. During the Heian period in Japan, women of the aristocracy began staining their teeth black, a practice known as ohaguro. This custom, which continued for centuries, was seen as a mark of refinement, maturity, and marital status. The black dye, made from a mixture of iron filings, vinegar, and tea, was applied regularly to maintain the desired shade. The origins of ohaguro were both practical and symbolic. The black coating protected teeth from decay in an era without modern dental care. By the discovery of centuries-old corpses with black teeth still in perfect condition, the Japanese appeared to write on this one. It also served as a visual contrast to pale skin and red lips, enhancing the aesthetic ideal of the time. Additionally, the black teeth differentiated humans from animals. Along with teeth blackening, other activities like teeth sharpening and partial removal of teeth could also be done. While Japan remained the most famous country involved in this practice, other countries like Vietnam, Thailand, the Philippines, and even India had records of women darkening their teeth for beauty purposes. While ohaguro faded in the late 19th century due to Western influences, reports have shown it has resurfaced once again in some of these countries. As black teeth became a symbol of elegance in Japan, another trend across ancient cultures sought to elevate the human form, literally. Number 1. Long skulls. Several beauty trends have existed for centuries, but none is as peculiar as the act of skull binding. Skull binding, or elongation, also known as artificial cranial deformation, was not a medical procedure, but rather a beauty practice seen in ancient cultures from the Americas to Africa and Central Asia. Beginning in infancy, a child's skull was bound with cloth or wooden boards to create an elongated shape. This practice, often reserved for the elite, was a marker of status, intelligence, and beauty. The Mayans, for example, viewed elongated skulls as divine, associating the shape with their gods. They also believed the shape of their skulls set them apart from the commoners and peasants. The process was painstaking and began a few days after birth, while the skull was still malleable. Parents would carefully mold their children's heads over several months, ensuring the desired shape was achieved without causing harm. The result was a striking, otherworldly appearance that set the individual apart from the general population. But you might be wondering just how long this practice has existed. The earliest record of cranial deformation goes as far back as 4000 BCE in the time of Socrates. In his works, he mentioned a group of people known as long heads or macrocephaly, people famous for their cranial modification and long-shaped skulls. But even with Socrates' records, skull binding was believed to have existed long before then. While elongated skulls were accepted in those times, historians wondered if the shape of the skull and the process itself had any effect on the person's intelligence. Fortunately, there hasn't been any proof that the intelligence of the Mayans was affected by their long skull. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.